Now let's come to a pertinent question of our times. What is war good for? Is it good for absolutely nothing? Or does it help business? The results are in, and as expected, one business is having a stellar year: the global military-industrial complex. The latest numbers are out. World military expenditure has reached a record high. It has reached $2,240 billion, or more than $2.2 trillion. Last year's growth is fueled mostly by Europe, which is expected, of course, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The war has shaken off the years of military complacency in Europe and started a global arms race all over again. Our next report brings you the details.
The war in Ukraine was bound to impact global military spending. It's the biggest conflict in mainland Europe since the Second World War, and it has alarmed European nations. Global military spending has gone up by 3.7%. In Europe, there's a jump of 13%, and the top spenders are countries close to Russia. Finland increased military expenditure by 36%, Lithuania by 27%, Sweden 12%, Poland 11%. Of course, the biggest spender was Ukraine. Its military expenditure shot up by a whopping 640%. In 2022, Ukraine spent over $44 billion on defense. What about Russia? It spent $86.4 billion. That's a rise of over 9% from the previous year. It seems like a modest rise, but given the fact that Russia was the world's third largest military spender anyway, the 9% bump is significant. Overall, almost every part of the world saw higher spending on arms. Leading the way, as always, was the US. Its military expenses totaled $877 billion in 2022. Remember, the global total is about $2.2 trillion. So Washington is single-handedly responsible for 39% of total global military spending. And while some of that was for arms to Ukraine, the majority was still for US defense purposes. America spent about 1.5 times what all of Asia and Oceania did on defense last year. And remember, Asia houses the second largest military spender in the world, China. China's military spending grew by 4.2% to about $292 billion. It's nowhere close to the US in terms of spending, but far beyond other nations. This is bad news for overall global stability. An arms race between rival powers that eclipses all others. It has very Cold War vibes to it. The fourth biggest military spender in the world is India. New Delhi spent $81.4 billion on arms. It's part of the recent trend of India's greater military focus. Number 5 on the global list is Saudi Arabia. The Gulf Kingdom increased military spending by 16%. It's Riyadh's first increase since 2018. Last year, Saudi Arabia spent a total of $75 billion on its military. It's not all gloom and impending doom, though. There were some exceptions to the global trend. Like Turkey and Nigeria, Nigeria's military spending fell by 38%. But this is just compared to 2021. That year saw Nigeria increase its spending tremendously, so it's more of an adjustment than a proper decrease. Turkey, however, saw military spending go down for the third year in a row. It's down 26% compared to 2021. But that's also expected due to the terrible economic condition of the country. It's been facing a crisis since 2018, and last year it saw more than 50% inflation. So it's not surprising that its military expenses have been falling for a while. Overall, the outlook for peace looks bleak. The war in Ukraine is likely to spur military spending for years to come. So will the rivalry between the US and China. Every nation will try and arm itself to the teeth, and it leaves the world more unstable. Like always, the only ones who will benefit are arms companies.